World leaders have arrived in Italy for the G7 summit. This year's meeting is set to focus on global conflict. Leaders have reportedly agreed on the terms of a $50 billion loan to Ukraine, backed by the profits from 300 billion euros in frozen Russian assets. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will also sign a 10-year bilateral security deal with the US to train Ukrainian armed forces, as well as an agreement with Japan for long-term support. Outlining the issues on the table, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said she expected concrete results from the talks.
We will talk about the current crises, starting with Ukraine and the Middle East. And we will start with the work by Japan to create solid and reliable supply chains. We will discuss what is probably the most complex challenge of our time, the arrival of artificial intelligence, clearly with the idea of taking advantage of the opportunity and governing the risks. And we will go back and look at the importance of giving our attention to the Indo-Pacific.
DW's chief political correspondent Nina Haza is at the summit. She has more on how G7 leaders aim to boost support for Ukraine.
Well, one of the strongest messages that the leaders of the 7 most industrialized countries definitely want to send from this summit is that they stand by Ukraine's side and that they are trying to support it in the long term in its fight against Russian aggression. And one way to do that is to solidify, if you want, financial support of Ukraine. So make it less dependent on changes in governments in a particular country. Say if another US president were to be selected and chosen by the electorate there, then what would that mean for the support of Ukraine? All these risks they want to get out of the way. They want to give Ukraine a big chunk of money. We're hearing some 50 billion euros worth of loan that they would take out, and the interest would be paid by windfall profits from those frozen Russian assets that exist in those 7 countries. And then President Zelensky from Ukraine is going to attend the summit as well. He is going to sign the last 2 of those long-term security agreements with G7 countries, so the US and Japan. All the others have already signed those 10-year security agreements with Ukraine, and that is a milestone for the country as well that says it needs to have flexibility now, but it also needs to be able to look into the future and know that its allies stand by its side.
We saw the Italian Prime Minister there welcoming her guests in a luxury village in southern Italy. Can you give us a bit of a sense about the place where the talks are taking place?
The Borgo Ignazia is definitely a luxurious place, and Giorgia Meloni probably chose the place for 2 reasons. One, it does show Italy from its best side, and she is, of course, the host of an international, one of the most high-ranking meetings that there are around the world. So, of course, she wants to present Italy at it. But the other reason is very simple. You can also have very good security, and that's just as important when you're dealing with high-ranking guests like the US president and the Ukrainian president.
And this follows Meloni's right-wing allies getting a significant boost in EU elections. What standing does she have among other world leaders at the summit?
Yeah, the EU elections last week definitely saw lots of losses for many governments within the European Union. If you take the examples of France and Germany, the governments there, their parties definitely lost. And Giorgia Meloni, after the EU elections, came out and presented herself as one that essentially won those elections. So there is a lot of tailwind for her, political tailwind at the moment. On the European Union stage, she is presenting herself as a mediator who has the support from all countries. She says she's also extending a hand to the global south, and she says she wants to change the relationship between European Union countries and countries in Africa and work with them on a more eye-to-eye level. Now, where she stands politically, of course, there's a bit of doubt when it comes to her domestic politics, where she is pursuing a very conservative path. Rules like abortion, for example, or the ideas that she has of the traditional family is something that more liberal countries within the European Union do see sceptically.
DW's Nina Haza reporting from the G7.